Welcome to Virtualize Everything. Today we're going to be taking a look at what's required to install Pi-hole in a Proxmox container here in 2025 with the newest release of Pi-hole being out, version 6. So the first thing we're going to need to do is access the Pi-hole website, and then we're going to scroll down and we're going to click Install Pi-hole. That's going to bring us up to their GitHub repository, which I'm showing right here. And we're going to scroll all the way down here until we get the one-step automated install directions. Then we're going to head over to our Proxmox web interface, and we're going to need some things to start the process. So we're going to be doing this inside of a container. So we're going to need a container template. To get the container template, we're going to select our local drive or wherever we want to store our template image if you don't have a default setup. Using the default setup, we'll select the local drive, then we'll select container templates, and we'll click on templates. Clicking on templates, we're going to go to the search feature and we're going to enter Ubuntu. After entering Ubuntu or starting to type Ubuntu, we're going to choose Ubuntu 22.04, which is the newest LTS version of Ubuntu. And we're choosing the LTS version because it's going to be supported for the longest amount of time, allowing us to use this container well into the future. Once we've selected that, we're going to press download, and the download of the container template will start. This happens relatively fast, and you probably see this in real time. Once we get task OK, we can go ahead and close this window, and the Ubuntu 24.04 image will show up just as it did here. Now we'll be able to go up to Create CT, and we're going to, if it doesn't autofill, select our node and our CT image. Then we're going to enter our host name, and you can call yours whatever you would like, but we're going to call ours Pi-hole. Then you're going to enter your root user password and confirm that password. Pressing next, we're going to change our storage location to local, and we're going to select our 24.04 image. Pressing next, we'll select our storage location, which we'll be using local LVM, which is your default storage location on a system like this. 8 gigs will be fine, so we'll press next, and we're going to up this to 2 cores. One core should be sufficient for just a Pi-hole install, but later on we're going to add some software to this, and we'll want to have a little bit more CPU power for that. Just like with our CPU core, 512 is going to be enough for Pi-hole, but we're going to go ahead and enter 2048 for that later project. Pressing next, we'll be able to select our network, and we're going to want to set a static IP address. We're going to enter 192.168.0.201.220, and then we're going to follow that up with the CIDR notation of -24. This is your standard CIDR notation for a network that goes from .0 to .254. Now you want to make sure that you're not using my IP address and you're using an IP address inside of your network's IP range, as my IP address could be different than your IP range in your network. We're going to hit tab, and now we're going to fill in our gateway IP address. Mine's going to be 192.168.0.1, and we're going to leave our IPv6 as static because we won't be using that. Now we can go ahead, press next, and we can view our DNS settings. We're going to use the DNS settings of the host, so we'll press next, look over all of the settings that we entered, and if everything looks correct, we can hit finish. Now our Proxmox system is going to go ahead and use an automated process for creating the container, and that should only take a few minutes. Once we get task OK, the container will be completed and we can go ahead and exit out of the window. Then we can select our container. And since we don't need to do any further configuration at this time, we can go ahead and start it. Once the container starts up, we can press console, and when it's fully started up, we can then start working with the project. Now that it's fully started, we can enter the username of root and the password that was set up during the creation of this container. The first step, like always, is going to be to update and upgrade our operating system. So we'll use apt update and then apt grade. And we'll add the -y to answer yes to the question and press enter. This will take a while, so I'll be back with you when it's finished. Now that all the updates are installed, it's time to start installing Pi-hole. This process is fairly straightforward, but we are going to have to install one piece of software before we start, and that's going to be Carl. Now, the reason we're going to have to go ahead and install this is because by default, Proxmox containers with Ubuntu don't come with it installed. This is different than Ubuntu distros, which do. In order to install this, we're going to go ahead and type apt install, and we're going to paste in curl. We could in turn type it out if we so wished, and then we're going to enter the -y again to answer yes, and then press enter. With this installed, we can go ahead and go back to the GitHub repository and copy the full command, then go to Proxmox and paste in the command. I found that if you're using Windows and you try to use the Control-C, Control-V inside of the Proxmox web interface, it does not work correctly. So once this has been pasted by right-clicking and going to paste, you can go ahead and press enter, and the installation process will happen. I'll be back with you when this installation process is finished to show you the next steps. So Pi-hole has a few questions it would like you to ask. The first one is a message telling you that it's going to transform this install into an ad blocker. We can go ahead and press enter. Then it tells you that it's free software and you shouldn't be paying. And if you want to donate, to go ahead and go to this URL where you can donate to the project. We can go ahead and press enter. And now it's going to tell you that it should have a static IP address. We set that up when we created the container, so we can press the over arrow for continue, and now it's going to ask us which DNS provider we want to get our addresses that we'll be caching and sinkholing, and we're going to choose Google today. Feel free to choose any other option you have from this list, and if you have one that's outside of this list, you can choose custom. I'll be pressing enter for Google. Now it's going to ask you if you want to use the list that comes with Pi-hole, and we do, so we'll once again press enter. It's going to ask us if we want logs. We do, so we'll press enter, and we want to show, so we'll once again press enter. Now the installation script's going to run and set everything up. This takes a few minutes, and once everything's installed, it's going to give you a web administrator password as well as the IP address for the server and the IP address for the web interface. We want to take notes of these, but we'll be able to take and use them in the next process. So pressing enter, we're returned back to the command line. The first thing we want to do is enter pi-hole and then a space and --. So the command is actually Pi-hole without a dash, and you can see where I entered this right here. Now this is going to give us an output of all the different commands that we want to enter to do things. And we're going to go ahead and look right here at the set password. So coming down back to the command line, we're going to go ahead and enter Pi-hole, set password, all one word, then a space, and the password we want to set, then enter. This will set the new password for the web interface. Now, as I'm in a remote connection away from my server, during the filming of this, I need to go set a few settings. so I can show you the next steps and logging into the web interface. If you're doing this at home, you're going to want to use this URL right here or this URL right here, depending on your network settings. The 192.168.0.220 is going to be the IP address that you assigned to it during the creation of the container. Don't forget the /admin at the end. Now I've set the settings so I can go ahead and access this with a URL. Remember, this information right here should be replaced with the IP address that you set up for the container. And then it should be /admin, just as I showed you right here. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and enter the password that you set and press enter, and you're greeted with your actual web interface. Now, there's a lot of different things in here, and as you can tell, we have no information or nothing set up at this time. The first thing we're going to want to do is go to Tools, select Update Gravity, and press Update. This should pull in from that default list of the Steve's block hosts that we set up during the installation. And as you noticed, now more of our information is filled out, our domain lists. If we want more block lists, I suggest going to the Fire blog, and it's fireblog.net, and you can get a good list of different ad lists that we can add. Let's select this one, this first.org list right here, and let's go ahead and copy it. Going back to our web interface, we should be able to go to Tools or Lists, and then at Lists right here as it has an address. We can paste, we can add comments, and we can assign it to groups now. Now we can click Add Block Lists. We can also add allow lists if we choose. Clicking add block list will go ahead and make this so it's now accessible, but we'll have to once again go into Tools and Update Gravity and click Update to add it to the system. Now, as you can see, we still have list here, but we now have the new add away list as well. And going to our dashboard, our number should have changed. If it didn't change, a lot of times it's due to the fact that the list you added has no new addresses to the list that you already have. The default list is fairly comprehensive, but it doesn't contain all. The next thing we're going to need to do is know how to use it. Now, you can either change your DNS server inside of your router, which I won't be doing because I can't access it, or you can change your DNS list inside of your system. Here at Windows, we can go to Search and we can enter Network, and we should be able to view network connections. From View Network Connections, we can right-click, go to Properties, select our IPv4, hit Properties, and we can then use our DNS addresses. Now, this server is remote and not on the same network as me, so I won't be setting this up today, but that's how you would set up Windows if you so chose. Pressing OK, and then your system would start using your newly set up server if you didn't want to go ahead and point all of your systems at this by setting your DNS settings inside of your router. We can also look at network settings, and what network will do is it'll show you where everything's coming and going from our Proxmox system into this particular container. We can look at interfaces and notice that we only have one interface set up here. If we wanted multiple VLANs or whatnot, we could configure that inside of the network tab here to have other interfaces coming into our Pi-hole server. We also should be able to set up our Pi-hole server by selecting Settings and DHCP, then enabling this box and setting our IP arrangements, as well as disabling DHCP inside of our router if we wanted Pi-hole to be our DHCP server. This is for a more advanced video when I'm not on the road and can actually do this inside of my network or inside of a lab rather to demonstrate for you. This is where we can select our DNS servers. So if we would like to not use Google today or even set a custom one, this is the screen we would do it at. To set a custom, we're going to click on this drop down here and we can go ahead and edit these. Then we can press save and apply. I'll show you this step here in a moment when we go ahead and add a recursive DNS server to this installation called Unbound. And what that's going to do is allow us to pull our IP addresses from the authority level, the top level DNS server, and not through a singular party like Google. We can also view the clients that are accessing this. And since I don't have any system set up, there's nothing to demo here. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next step of setting up that recursive DNS server. Unbound. So we're going back to the Proxmox web interface and we're going to go to console to do so. The next step, which is installing Unbound, is pretty well documented here at docs.pi-hole.net guides DNS Unbound. So we'll be able to just follow the commands here to get Pi-hole and Unbound working together here. And install Unbound is the first step. So we're going to use apt install Unbound to do so. So we'll go ahead, highlight what we want. We'll copy it. We'll head back to the Proxmox web interface and we'll paste this in. Then we'll add the -y for the yes answer and then press enter. Now that Unbound is installed, let's go back and see what our next step is. It looks like our next step is to use a tool called wget to access a name server or at least the root hints directory file so that we can go ahead and tell Unbound where to access the root hints or those high level servers that know where our IP addresses or how to resolve the IP addresses of the websites that we enter. So let's go ahead, copy this full command again, head back to the web interface, paste the command, press enter, and we should get an output that looks like this as everything is downloaded. You should be able to press enter now and return to a command prompt. At the website, the next step is going to be to use a tool called Nano to give Unbound a configuration file that will tell it how to behave. Now, this configuration file has been pre-configured, so all we're going to have to do is copy and paste it into the right location. But essentially what this does is it tells Unbound that it only can communicate over localhost on port 5335, and that is going to be important information for configuring Pi-hole once we get Unbound set up and running. Down here, we also set a bunch of rules so that Unbound will only communicate on a local network. So if somebody tried to use our Unbound server for a DDoS attack, they are unable to do so, or at least more challenged. So copying this address path right here, we can head to the web interface. We're going to enter nano space and then paste that path. Press enter, head to the website, copy the configuration file, head back to the Proxmox web interface and paste in the configuration file. Then we're going to press Control X, Y to for yes, and then enter to save it all. Now back here at these directions, we're asked to do some tests. We can go ahead and copy the full command or at least the command to restart Unbound. Now that we gave it a configuration file, we'll go ahead, paste that command in, press the over arrow, hit enter, and then we'll do the dig test and see if everything's working correctly. Pressing enter, We get an IP address for Pi-hole.net right here. So we do know everything is working correctly for Unbound. We can do one last test to verify DNSSEC is working by entering this line, which should fail. So let's go ahead and try that. Pressing enter will get a time delay, and this should fail to respond. Communication error timed out. This should come back 3 times like this, and there you go. It failed. The next line should work, so let's go ahead and copy it, paste it, and try. And as you can see, we got an IP address back, so it worked. At this point, we're ready to start configuring Pi-hole in order to use our new server. To do that, we're going to go to our Pi-hole's web interface, and we should still be logged in here. Now we should be able to go to Settings, DNS, use Custom DNS Server, and right here we're actually given directions for Unbound. We need to copy this line with a copy, delete these 2 that are in there, and paste in our Unbound, making sure that we also uncheck our Google up here. Then we can hit save and apply. And if we click on the drop down, now you see that we point back to localhost, and we're able to now use our Unbound server to recursively pick up IP addresses using our Pi-hole. So what this will do is allow us to go through and get the IP addresses from the top level domain servers and then filter them to make sure that we block out our ad servers or our malicious servers or whatnot. And we'll be able to use this whole package to not only add security to our network, but add privacy, because companies like Google or Cloudflare won't be able to see what websites we're viewing by funneling all of our information through them. The security part will be because of the recursiveness of Unbound is going out and it's actually asking the root level domain servers or top level domain servers what the IP address is. So you're not going to poison the the server of a root server because you're not going to affect as many people. If you wanted to poison a DNS server, you would poison a DNS server like Google. At least that's the theory, so that you could affect as many people as possible and your attack has the most amount of success of working. At least that's the theory for why recursive DNS servers are more secure. I hope you enjoyed this video and you're able to start using Pi-hole inside of your home lab on your Proxmox server. And you're also now able to enjoy the higher security and privacy of using Unbound as part of that Pi-hole setup. As always, I hope you have a good night and you enjoyed this project, and please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to help Virtualize Everything continue to grow and bring you more content. As always, have a good night.